I am at the stage where I've done all my binding tweaks. Any spots that had little gaps, I wet down and then use the hot iron to clamp it in place. And just to clean it up, I use a rasp. This is a fine-toothed rasp. And if you cover the end of it with tape, you won't gouge your top when you're rasping. So that's highly recommended. But basically I just want to, at this point, take off the top of the Purfling strips just enough so that I can get super glue in there without the white glue that I glued the binding on with getting in the way of the super glue penetrating. So with multiple strips like this, sometimes the white glue doesn't get in between the strips. So it's a good idea to use super glue to basically make sure there's glue in between all of the strips. A couple things to consider: you don't want to get super glue in the top. So once I get to the super gluing stage, I'll be holding paper towel in one hand just in case I get some on the top. I can wipe it off really quickly. Yeah. So. Alright, I've got super glue in a pipette. It's a little bit easier to use this way, easier to control so you don't get too much on. I also have paper towel in my other hand, so I'm ready to wipe off any excess should it start running into the back or the top. It's always a good idea to wear a dust mask, or like a good mask, and some safety glasses with this stuff. The fumes are pretty nasty. I'm mainly concerned about the Purfling strips, so right against the top and back. Okay, so I can wipe that excess off. I just had enough a chance to soak in. And then spray it with Glue Boost. Then I can go right ahead to filing it. I'll flip it over. The top's a little bit more critical because it'll want to soak up the super glue quicker than the hardwood back. So I just have to be a little bit more on top of the wiping the excess off. Alrighty. So I did get some on the top, but I still have to sand the top down and pile the edges down, so I'm gonna get rid of all that super glue by the time I'm done the final sanding. But you don't want to leave too much on there so that it actually soaks deeply into the grain. Especially if you're gonna do staining on your guitar. Alright, back to cleaning up the binding. For this part I like to use a file because it's a little bit less aggressive. I'm almost down to the back and the top, so a file with a big wad of tape on the end again works great. And you just basically go down until you start going into your top and your back a little bit. And you'll know it's flush. You can also use a scraper if you like using a scraper. If you are using a scraper, especially on the top, you have to make sure you're not going across the grain because you can actually start digging out grain lines. So I'm always angled to the grain, especially on the top. When cleaning up the sides of the binding, scraper works really well. I'm not sure if I would really recommend anything other than a scraper, and then followed by a little bit of sandpaper. But when you're scraping, you want to keep your binding flat with your side, so make sure you're not scraping like this or like that. As long as you keep the scraper along the side as you're scraping, then you'll be fine. So I'll just do this around the entire guitar and chase it with some fine grit sandpaper because there's going to be little bumps and lumps where the glue gobs were. That's really all there is to it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe, and if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. See you in the next video.